let's talk about the Stolen Fate Adventure Path. This is going to be my second of two videos tackling this. The first one was all about the plot and themes and general structure of the campaign, and in this video I will be sharing my thoughts and my opinions, and towards the end I will be getting into deeper and deeper spoilers as the video progresses. I will say spoiler warning up front though, there will be spoilers throughout. But I'm going to save the really heavy ones towards the end. If you're a player, stop watching now. If you are a GM or prospective GM and you haven't seen part 1, I would really recommend you go back and you watch that before you dive into this. But with that all set up, let's talk about the Stolen Fates campaign. Before I get into my opinions, I do want to acknowledge a couple of biases I have. And so as I am sharing my thoughts and my views on the adventure path, just know that if you don't share these same biases that I have, your take on the adventure path may be a little different. But the first of those two biases I want to acknowledge is that I greatly prefer 3-book adventure paths over the 6-book adventure paths. Too often, I feel like the 6-book adventure paths have a bit of filler put in. To a good analogy or a comparison is going back to my videos about Age of Ashes. To me, that seemed like there were 3 good books that dealt with the threat of a dragon and a prophecy, and there were 3 books that dealt with a slave guild that that just kind of felt like it was there, in my opinion, to make it a 6-book campaign. But with a 3-book adventure path like we have here with Stolen Fate, it's lean and mean, all killer, no filler. There's nothing in the campaign that made me sit back and say, that's not really pertinent or it's not really tied into the plot. And the second bias I want to acknowledge is one that I mentioned in the earlier video, and that is I absolutely love the adventure from first edition that this adventure path is a sequel to, the Harrowing. I think it's an absolutely fantastic module to run, and so I have a bias there. The idea of being able to revisit some of those characters in that setting and see what happens after that campaign is interesting to me, that may not be as interesting to others. So with that in mind, let's talk about my general thoughts and opinions. I very, very, very much like Stolen Fate. Stolen Fate, from the get-go, I was into it. I was digging it. I really like the way they've tied the adventure and mechanics of this campaign into the death of Veridin. So it's intrinsically tied to a major event in the Pathfinder setting in the lore. And really, the death of Eredin and the effect that had on prophecy and fate and destiny and divination magic, I always viewed as it being very mechanical. Like, the reason why that is in the lore is because Pathfinder is a role-playing game, and you want players to have agency in themselves and agency in the world. And if there was such of a thing as guaranteed fate and destiny, that could infringe upon the players who want to have agency in their characters' lives and in the world around them. So Paizo wisely removed that part of kind of traditional high fantasy settings of there being prophets and fate and destiny and stuff like that, and baked into the lore that either didn't exist or didn't work as one might expect. And now that fate and destiny is not guaranteed, nothing is determined, that allows players to have a larger effect on their own lives and of the setting around them. So I always viewed it as a purely mechanical decision that Paizo did. But I never thought, even within the lore, like, what effect is this going to have on other people? I just kind of assumed people would just accept that destiny is no longer guaranteed, and just move on. Like, it's fundamental reality is different now. There's nothing we can do about it. We just move on. But in this campaign, you see that there are people who were greatly affected by that change, and with different perspectives on what they should do in response to that change. And I'll go over the villains and the antagonists of the story a little later as we get into the deeper spoilers. But I really like the lore and backstory and the way that this adventure path connects to a prominent part of lore that, or connects to it in a way that I never really expected. I don't have any major concerns about the adventure path. I should just reiterate, I said this in the first video, but I'll say it again here. I have not played this adventure path. I've not GM'd it. I have only read through it. So I'm not in a position to give opinions about encounter balance and the such. But from the encounters that I did read through, there was nothing that just objectively jumped out at me as being a problem. I will say that I think they talk about it actually in the player's guide. The campaign obviously deals a lot with concepts of fate and destiny and order versus choice and free will and the chaotic side of an alignment spectrum. And so this adventure path does favor to some degree characters who have chaotic alignments, chaotic good and chaotic neutral in particular, and characters that are lawfully aligned. I won't say certainly would not feel out of place or like they don't have a role to play, but the adventure assumes that the heroic characters, the players, are ultimately going to choose to side with fate and, or sorry, decide with free will and choice over hard order, fate, and destiny. There is some guidance provided in book 3 for if your players decide not to side with free will and instead decide that, you know what, having an order and structure to the universe and having destiny makes sense. When you have destiny, there's, you're not surprised. You're on a path. You can see where things are headed. You can use divination to guide you, and all those sort of things might say that those are good things. And so if you have a lot of players who are lawful, neutral, and alignment, and they're playing that way, there is a path in the adventure where they could choose to go the way of destiny and not the way of free will and choice. And that's a completely valid choice for players to make. I just bring this up because the adventure path, especially the climax of the adventure path, is written from the perspective and the assumption that, like the canonical version of this, I believe, is players choosing free will and fate. If they choose to go with destiny, free will and choice, I mean, if they choose to go with fate and destiny instead, there is guidance. Just be aware that you may have to do a little bit of tweaking in the finale of the book, in the last chapter of book 3, to kind of make that all work. Also, something I'll mention, I really love this idea of each of the cards in the deck of destiny has this epitome text. And once you have the card and you go to the Harrow Court, you can epitomize that card, and that will in some way change the Harrow Court. Often this means adding a new NPC or several new NPCs to the world. So as the players are adventuring, their home base in this pocket dimension of the Harrow Court is growing, becoming more lively, and just often more and more new NPCs are being added. These are not real living creatures. I kind of view it as they're like NPCs in a video game. They're there and they function like a living creature, but they're programmed to do a certain thing, and they're not going to deviate from what they're programmed to do. But what this means is, as they're bringing cards back and they're epitomizing these cards, they have all of these neat, awesome new NPCs being added to the Harrow Court, and the book doesn't really go into personalities for these characters, um, names, personalities, backstories, how they interconnect in their community and with each other. And I understand why. Like that would be another 300 pages in and of itself, because there's 54 cards in the deck, and each one has epitome text that shapes the world. So I'll just put that out there to prospective GMs that you might feel like the weight is on you to take these NPCs and flesh them out and give them identities and give them names and give them a place in the story beyond just fulfilling the mechanical role that they're programmed to do. The midwife card adds a healer, and that's all you're pretty much told. Well, why don't you give this healer a name? And this is someone who can interconnect with the players. Another thing that I've thought about is I think kind of in a perfect world, the players would never see the epitome text on the cards. Now, unfortunately, I know we live in 2023 and players are likely to just go on to Archives of Nethys or Easy Tools or whatever resource online and see the full text of the cards. But I think in a perfect world, it would be fun for them just to go to the village in the Harrow Court and just kind of organically discover, oh, there's a new stand with a blacksmith. Well, they weren't here before. Let's go introduce ourselves. And that could open up venues for role playing and storytelling beyond just, oh, we got the card. Now we've got a blacksmith. Okay, next card, we got a healer. Next card, oh, there's an order of knights here. If they don't know what is going to occur when they epitomize the cards and they just learn it through journeying through the Harrow Court, I think that might be more fun and it might connect with the story a little better. So let's talk about a couple of questions that were asked. By far, the most common question I was asked was, what level 1 to 10 adventure path would I recommend to do first and then lead into Stolen Fate? So at the time of this recording, I believe we have 4 level 1 to 10 adventure paths. These are Abomination Vaults, Quest for the Frozen Flame, Outlaws of Alkenstar, and Gatewalkers. My opinion is I would probably do Abomination Vaults. I have read Abomination Vaults. I haven't made videos for them yet, but I have read them, and I think it's if you're into dungeon crawls, and me and my players are, it's pretty darn solid. And it also has the advantage of Abomination Vaults takes place on the Starset Isles, on Kortos. The Atari, the town where Abomination Vaults occurs, is very close to Absalom. It provides lumber to the city of Absalom. So it's real easy for players to travel from the conclusion of Abomination Vaults to the beginning of Stolen Fate that takes place in the Grand Bazaar of Absalom. That said, some of the advice from online, I think maybe it was even James Jacobs who shared this. Forgive me if I got the wrong person. But someone from Paisos just pointed out on the official forums that you should feel free to do any of the level 1 through 10 adventure paths, whatever connects best with you and your players and your table, and just make sure that the cards that are given to each of the players in the prologue into Stolen Fate, just make those cards part of the treasure they receive at the end of the preceding adventure path. So once they finish Quest for the Frozen Flame, I haven't actually read that one yet, but I assume after you kill the big bad evil guy at the end of book 3, there's some sort of treasure that's awarded. Just make sure that those cards are part of it and have the players, look at the treasure hoard or whatever it is and see the cards, and maybe they all feel compelled to pick up a different card at the same time. And when they do so, that's when they have this shared vision that draws them to the 3 moves ahead shop in the Grand Bazaar, and you're off to the races with Stolen Fate. Also got questions about the first edition adventure, The Harrowing. First is, where can we get that? Well, the official Paizo store does not have any copies of the physical adventure anymore, but you can purchase the PDF of The Harrowing for $20 from the official Paizo store. If you want a physical copy of it, you can try your luck with eBay and Amazon. I was actually on Amazon yesterday, and I searched for it, and it said 1 copy left. So I don't know if that 1 copy is still there, but you might want to roll the dice and try your luck. And I think it was $15 for the physical copy, which is crazy. Good deal. Try to grab that one if it's still there. The other question about the Harrowing for first edition is, it's one of my favorite adventures of all time. So Dave, why don't you just convert it to second edition? Well, I'd love to, but I'm not going to commit to doing that because I've got a million other things going on, and I don't foresee running that anytime soon because I'm already involved in other deep campaigns. But if I ever find myself with a day and nothing to do, I might try tackling it. And if anybody out there wishes to take a stab at converting it, let me know, and I'll link it in the comments and description here if you convert it and are willing to let me share it. Another question about the campaign was, how linear is it? Are there any sandbox sections? And yeah, I understand where that's coming from. Especially from viewing the part 1 of this 2-part overview. I won't say it's 100% on rails, but it is pretty linear in structure. It is, you find these cards, and that opens the Harrow Court. And once you're in the Harrow Court, 6 magical portals open up. And you go through those 6 portals. And then after you go through those 6 portals, well, the portals energize and go to a new location, and it is sort of very laid out step by step. There are no grand sandbox pieces. There's no well, I say there's no exploration. You can do some exploration of the Harrow Court. There is a hex map of the Harrow Court. Each hex is 12 miles. There is some journeying you can do around there. That is not as hard-coded into the campaign as a lot of the other sections of the plot and story that are very, very clearly defined. That you do this and then you do this. If you don't know how to get to the next piece, don't worry. There are NPCs who the GM's going to introduce, and they're going to tell you, you know what, I think you're supposed to be over here to do a thing, and I can guide you. So yes, it is more linear than some other adventure paths. I won't say it's completely on rails because there is a lot of player freedom of choice. For example, the first time the 6 portals in the Harrow Court activate, the players can decide to tackle those sections in any order they want, as long as they go through each of them eventually. In the section that is the ruins of Ko from the Shori Empire, that functions very similarly. There are several little locations, and players have some element of freedom of choice in how they tackle those. Also, there's a lot of encounters in this campaign that players are encouraged to use methods other than violence. So they don't have to kill the crystal dragon. There are other and possible better solutions to managing that creature. And the same goes for a lot of other parts of the adventure path. But no, there are no grand sandbox areas like Book 2 of Age of Ashes that was almost entirely exploration. Another question that came up had to do with the cards in the Deck of Destiny. There's 54 of them. They're all artifact cards. They all have special abilities. Is there any danger of 54 different magical artifacts, upsetting game balance. As I mentioned before, I can't really talk about game balance because I haven't actually played it, but I will point out that the cards are all have the invested trait, and therefore, no player could have or use more than 10 of them at a time. Any character in the game can only benefit from a maximum of 10 magical items that have the invested trait. And so they may just for their adventuring gear already be using a couple of those for items that had to be invested. And that total would be shared with these cards. So no one person is going to be walking around with 50 artifact cards that are all active and all working because they all have the invested trait, and that's going to limit how many magical items you can use at once. All right, so now we're going to get into the heavy spoiler section. Final warning before we get into all the heavy duty stuff. Basically, the remaining questions have to do with who are the villains, what are their real motivations, and what's all the stuff that happens in book 3 that I skipped over in my first video. So there's sort of two groups of villains or antagonists in this story. The first is a group known as the Harrowing Three. The Harrowing Three are a group of Norn witches. They are clearly inspired by the Fates from Greek mythology. Fates are three witches or sisters, and they control the fate of every human being. When a person is born, the first of the witches weaves a string, and then the next witch decides how long the person will live, and they measure the string out, and however long that string is how long the person will live. And then the third of the witches has a pair of scissors, and when it's time for that person to die, she cuts the string, and that symbolizes the person's death. But they were in charge of fate and destiny, or they had a strong hand in it before the death of Aridin. And they view the death of Aridin as a wound. It's like destiny and the world and reality was healthy before the death of Aridin. And then when Aridin died, that inflicted a wound on reality. And so their purpose and goal is to heal that wound. They want to repair the damage that was caused by the death of Aridin. And the way they're going about that is they created the Deck of Destiny, an incredibly powerful artifact magic item that if someone does a Harrow reading, like a tarot reading with it, they can perform that ritual, that harrowing, not for one individual, like a tarot reading would be, but for the entire world of Golarion. And in addition to that, they're not just, with the Deck of Destiny, they're not just foretelling the most likely possible future. This ritual would cement the future. It's not predicting the future, it would cause the results of the harrowing to be etched in stone, and therefore, in their view, would be healing the damage caused to reality when Aridin died. And, they're not evil creatures. I believe they're lawful neutral. They are viewing this from a perspective of the reality in the world was healthy before his death. Now there's a wound and we want to fix it. So in the backstory, while they were creating they created the 54 cards for the deck, then they needed to create a very powerful case to hold the cards in it. For that, they enlisted the help of a couple of individuals. And these two individuals, who were very interested in harrowing, were part of an order or a cult. And from reading it, it feels like maybe they were involved in older adventures, maybe Pathfinder Society stuff that I'm not familiar with. But at any rate, once Aridin died, a nobleman in Cheliax either discovered or wrote a book called The 1,000 Whispers, the Book of 1,000 Whispers. And the Book of 1,000 Whispers includes, I'm guessing, 1,000 prophecies that were to occur after the death of Aroden. And so the idea is this book holds the future of the world as it is supposed to be before prophecy and divination was ruined with the death of Aroden. So this cult takes it upon themselves to ensure that all of those prophecies come true because they believe that is the way the world was supposed to be before Aroden died. And two members of that order are enlisted by the Harrowing Three, the Three Witches, to assist in creating the case to hold the cards for the Deck of Destiny. And they decide that they want to steal the deck, and then they'll do the harrowing, but they're going to stack the deck. They're not just going to do a neutral reading of the harrowing the way the harrowing three would. They're going to stack the deck, and they're going to do it in such a way to guarantee that the prophecies in the Book of 1,000 Whispers come true, and that they are all somehow benefited, that they're all going to be rich and powerful and so on. So just before the Harrowing 3 complete the harrowing to use the Deck of Destiny and cement fate, they try to steal the deck from them. The Harrowing 3 react to this defensively in a way that cuts the link between the 54 cards. The metaphorical link between the 54 cards that make it a deck is severed, and that causes all 54 cards to get scattered throughout Golarion. And that is where the adventure path kicks off, as our players find themselves the recipients of some of those cards. So, what happens in Book 3? Oh, well, maybe I should, before we get into that, the members of the cult who tried to steal the deck, they recruit a third person who's a mercenary lord, and they create a team called the Unmatched. So there are three members of the Unmatched, and these are the three primary villains of the campaign. Each of the three books has one of the three members of the Unmatched as its big bad evil guy. So, what are the parts of Book 3 that I didn't want to spoil in the first video that talked about themes and structure and plot overview? In Book 3, the heroes eventually receive 53 of the 54 cards in the deck. There's only one card left. And that one card is in the possession of Raven Nicoletta. Because when the cards in the Deck of Destiny were severed and scattered, she reached up her arm to snatch one card before they all disappeared. And she snatched one. And it has to be the one that she was fated to get. And that one card is called Betrayal. So what happens is once the players have 53 of the 54 cards, Raven can sense through her card, Betrayal, that all the other 53 cards are now in one group's possession. And when she activates the Betrayal card, it causes all of those cards to teleport to her. So the players, when they're an inch away from victory, when they only need one more card, they suddenly find all of their work undone. And all 53 of the cards that they've collected have now disappeared. And I don't believe they know it in the moment. I'd have to go back and reread that section. But they're now all in the control of Raven Nicoletta. So now Raven Nicoletta in Book 3, the big villain, she now has all the cards of the Deck of Destiny, and all that's left is for her to travel to a special location. You can't do this kind of powerful magic just anywhere. She has to go to a specific location with the case and perform the harrowing to cement the future of Galarian in a way that benefits her and her interests. So the players, in their search to regain the deck, they travel to Irison and they meet the Harrowing Three. They have a conference with the three witches, and the three witches get into a debate with them. And there's a grand debate about order and destiny versus free will and choice. And it uses a victory point system to see if the players are at all successful in getting the witches to see the value of free will and choice. But ultimately, the witches are on the side of structure and order and destiny. And they are going to offer the players, they're going to say, we need you to go get this deck. We're not going to be capable of traveling to go there and do it. We need you to do this. Would you please go get the deck of destiny and bring it back to us so that we can do what needs to be done? And that kind of sets off the end of the final chapter of book 3. And it's possible that the players may choose to battle the three witches. It's possible that if they score enough points, the witches will say, you know what, we don't entirely agree with you, but we trust you to go do what you think is best, and not sort of require them to bring the deck back for them to perform a ritual. And that's pretty much where the story progresses and concludes. After their conference and debate with the three witches, the players will be put on the path to find Raven Nicoletta, and they will arrive while she is performing the final ritual, and that's our climactic battle. After the battle, the players will have the deck of cards, and they will have a choice to be made of what they want to do with the deck now that they have it. And that could mean going back to the three witches or the Harrowing Three and giving them the deck. The adventure proper ends with them defeating Raven Nicoletta and getting the deck. But there are a few pages that go into, after the adventure, what could occur depending on what they want to do with the deck. And it sort of spells out the options of destroying the deck so that it can never be used. It has an option of, we have to protect the deck. Maybe they say we don't want to destroy it, but we can't trust it to be in anybody else's hands. So what do they do to protect it? And there's the option of them using it. And it has the system involved. If they want to use it, how does that work? And what could possibly come out of it? Now, spoiler on top of spoilers, it all turns out that the deck's not actually powerful enough to change or to enforce destiny, but it's still really, really, really powerful, and it can put people on paths to get certain outcomes that you want. But even if it's used correctly, it won't completely undo the damage that was done when Aerodin died. So that's book 3. Those are the main villains. I think if I run this adventure path, I might try to incorporate some aspects of the Unmatched a little earlier. It might even be a good idea to have like a one-shot before the campaign proper, where maybe the players encounter members of the cult who are trying to force a prophecy from the Book of 1,000 Whispers to come true. That way they go into it knowing about that order and what they're trying to do and why. And that might give a little more incentive, especially early in the adventure path. The motivations are very much either I'm searching for cards because I like treasure and their magic, or I'm searching for the cards because I know that somebody who summons devils is after them and they're bad. And for, honestly, my group, that would probably be enough. I got people who want to champion good and righteousness, and I got people who are just like, hey, treasure, let's go get it. But it might be a good idea, I think, to kind of sprinkle in some knowledge of the Unmatched and what they're up to early on, just to give a little more context and a little more incentive to opposing them. So that's it. That's my thoughts and opinions on Stolen Fate. I really, really, really like it. If I am fortunate enough to find me in a position to run a level 11 to 20 adventure path, it's definitely number one on my list right now. Let me know in the comments what your thoughts are. If you GM'd it, any part of it, let me know how it's working for you. Let everybody know how it's working for you. And as always, I want to say thank you to everybody out there who supports me, whether that's by clicking the like button or subscribing to the channel, subscribing to the Patreon. I appreciate everything the community does to support me. And with that, thanks for watching, take care, and happy gaming.